Good morning. We are at the end of this ninth step before the promises is a very special part of the big book for me because I feel like it guides my living amends to my family. And anyone who says that the big book doesn't talk about living amends may have skipped or forgotten or never read page 82 and 83. To me, it's the most important reading of my family, the way I behave with my family, my wife, my kids. Let's read it at the bottom of page 82. I just want to pray. Please, God, help me to set aside this morning everything I think I know about this reading, especially because I've read it so many times and I've quoted it and I've texted it and told people to read it. I just want to put aside what I think I know about it, what I think I know about me, what I think I know about the steps, about living amends, about you, God. So I could be open while I read this to having a new experience with the steps, with the book, with myself, and with you. Amen. Page 82. If we have no such complications, there is plenty we should do at home. So we just finished talking about how to make amends for all sorts of different, infidelity, money, we owe money, alimony, all sorts of different things. But even if we have no such complications, we're just straight up in recovery for addiction. There's plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he had so shockingly treated, passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today, would perhaps be dead. Right there already, it's already giving me a lot of instructions. That staying sober is a long way from making amends. Yeah, I can't make amends if I'm not staying sober, but sobriety itself is not the amends. Number two, it already tells me that the patience that my wife has, that my parents had, is beyond imaginable. And I need to appreciate that and internalize that. And that in some ways, I would have been dead long time ago. Next paragraph. The alcoholic is like a tornado. Shem, I am a tornado who has roared my way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept my home in turmoil. We feel a man is not thinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He's like a farmer who comes out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarks, I don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Isn't it grand the wind stopped blowing? So obviously the story is that you have a guy who has a beautiful farm. The tornado comes, destroys the farm. Meanwhile, the farmer and his wife and the family had to go hide in the cellar so that they shouldn't get killed in the cyclone. And when he comes up, his farm is completely ruined. And he's like, oh, look, the wind stopped blowing. So the cyclone's over, as if nothing happened. Like, dude, your farm is destroyed. Oh, look, I'm sober. I'm not drinking anymore. I haven't masturbated in 2 months. Why is my wife still angry? I mean, man, any of us who have worked with sponsees know that this resentment is newcomer resentment number one. Why is my wife still angry at me? Goodness freaking gracious. And we've been guilty of it ourselves. Page 83, top of the page. Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. Reconstruction means we have to rebuild that farm we destroyed. Hurricane Shim came through town and we have to rebuild. Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that I'm sorry doesn't fit the bill at all. I apologized already. What's her problem? That's a remorseful mumbling that we're sorry. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Well, it wasn't easy staying sober with you. That's blaming them. Being very careful not to criticize them. Well, I know, here's my favorite newcomer blame. I know it's my fault and I own it, but you should know that it was because you, in the same sentence, I'm not blaming you. I own it, but it's because you, blah, 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 blah. No, 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 no. The 12 and 12 says that as far as the word blame is concerned, we must take it out of our vocabulary. It's gone. No more. Yes, their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. And my favorite blame of all time, you were this way before I married you. Don't blame my sexualism for your craziness. You were this way before I married you. Yes, my wife came into marriage with a lot of typical S&on issues that made my unhealthiness comfortable to her. Let's not beat around the bush. And you know what else happened? If I was the person I made believe I was, and if I was the person she thought I was, and if I was the person like I shared last week, guess how much healing she could have had from all that with a sober, emotionally sober version of me. It could have been a new beginning. And I not only did the things I did wrong, but I also helped make all that stuff worse. So I stay far, far away from the you were this way before I married you excuse. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partially responsible. So we clean house with the family. How do we do that? Right here it says, we ask every morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And I'm going to go on the record and make and admit publicly that if you said to me, Shem, when is the last time you sat quietly in meditation in the morning and said to your Creator, God, please show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love with my family, with my wife, patience, tolerance, kindness, love. Now, in my defense, I do live with these four living amends consciously every single day. There are four things that I pray for every day. And one of them is for my marriage, that I be able to not fight with my wife. One of them is for my anger, that I not lose my temper with my family. And one of them is lust, obviously. And one of them is that I not eat like a pig. So I do in my way do this. But imagine if we ask God every morning in meditation that he show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And people say there's no living amends in the big book. Next paragraph. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire. So wait 1 second. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. That means spiritual life is a theory means I read the big book. I go to meetings. I have even done a workbook on the steps. But if we take surveillance video of my life, I'm still crazy. I'm still jealous. I'm still honking people on the road. I'm still passing them up when they go too slow, and giving the finger to the car next to me, and smacking my kids, and not being home to help out when my wife is busy, and I had a sponsee once who went Friday afternoon. His wife is trying to bathe the kids, finish preparations for cooking, last minute sweeping, and he would go play football with fellowship. And he said, I have to, it's for my self-care. The therapist said I have to do self-care, and guys are playing football, so I go play football. And are you crazy? That's the epitome of selfishness, right? That's what this.
I'm sure his wife was. I'm sure his wife was happy that he went to play football.
I should have asked her first before I told him to stay home. I hear that. Not all men are wanted. I get that. And
No, if he
guy,
had that attitude, I'm sure she
right,
was
right, right,
happy.
right. Well, that's the point. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. We have to live it. Yes, in sobriety, I have slept on the couch a few times, and I have a choice to lay there and miserable and resentful. I don't deserve this. I'm 5 years sober. Or I could lay there and close my eyes and feel wrapped up in God's grace and know that this too shall pass, and that God is guiding me, and he hasn't taken me this far just to take me this far, and that my wife is going through whatever she's going through, and it's okay, and we're going to be okay. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. That's living the first three steps. Doing a fourth and fifth step. Either, last Wednesday I met with my sponsor. I talked to him about this whole thing about, my anxiety going over to newcomers because I can't really be available. And we did a fears inventory, and we went through it, and we're still talking about it. It's like, we have to live it. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought to not urge them. If only my wife went to Essenot. My favorite was, there was a guy in Lakewood who complained that the reason why every bad thing in his life was because his wife didn't go to Essenot. And everybody else's wife goes to Essenot, that's why they don't fight. And everyone else's wife goes to Essenot, that's why they're sober. Everyone else's wife goes to Essenot, that's why they have sex. Anyway, one day this guy's wife went to Essenot. And then came the next 6 months of whose dumb idea was this? Pardon my French. Every meeting he would say, fuck Essenot. My wife's worse than she ever was. You know what happened? He urged her to live upon spiritual principles. And the big book says, unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. And now here's the line everyone wants to make believe doesn't exist. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness will make a skeptic out of anyone. I was going to say septic, but that's also true. 10 or 20 years with sexualism will make a septic out of anyone. I'll share it now. I was complaining about my wife to actually an AA old timer, but he's in our program also. but his main fellowship is AA. Okay. 51 years of sobriety in AA. And I was complaining about my wife. And she's just so stubborn, and she doesn't do S&on, and she never went through the steps with a sponsor. And he said to me a very powerful criticism, and it has to do with the tradition of attraction rather than promotion. If the only example of the 12 steps in action that your wife gets to see is you, why would she want that way of life? So she could turn out like you? So if you want to convince her that there's value in working the steps, why don't you show her what the steps look like in real life? And maybe when you become a powerful, when you become an example of why someone should work the steps, not only will she want to work the steps, he told me, I bet you she'll want you to be the one to do it with her. Oh, come on. There's so many problems with that theory, I told him, that I don't even know where to start. And besides, it's very inappropriate for me to work steps with my wife. That's not staying on my side of the street and blah, blah, blah. And he said, you may be in a position where the only one that can help her is you. Well, wasn't he the Italian prophet? Because one day my wife says to me, I don't really see people at my meetings who have your recovery. I said, what? She goes, I watch how you don't just work your steps, you live them. You've transformed. She says to me, I said, where are we going with this? She says, if you take me through the steps, then I'll do it. I said, are you freaking kidding me? So and then I remembered what this guy told me. I couldn't believe it. So I took a deep breath and I grabbed the 12 and 12. I said, all right, let's do it. And it's definitely been an interesting experience, but we've done a lot of step work over the last few years. And as recently as this week, we just finished step 3 in the 12 and 12 again. We read a little bit like we do here with the big book, and we sit and we write and we share it. And she's into it. Now, it certainly is not traditional, you know, certainly not traditional. But neither is my disease, you know. and it's exactly what the big book says. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. Okay. I'm just wondering if we should read the next paragraph. Let's read the next paragraph just to finish step 9 in the big book. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. Like part of why I shared last week, part of why I pushed off my direct amends to my wife is because like you can't, you cheat on your wife. How do you make amends for that? We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would write them if we could. And again, that's step 8. We're willing to. We're back to step 8 again. We're willing to make amends, but sometimes we just can't. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. I've done that. I've called people on the phone. We send them an honest letter. There may be valid reasons for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. So they're just giving me the attitude that I'm supposed to keep in my head when I'm doing this work. I don't live in shame and self-pity and self-hatred. I'm living in God's world now. I don't crawl before anyone. But I'm not arrogant. I'm sensible. I'm not stupid. And that's where sponsorship comes in, and maybe therapy comes in. Make sure some of these amends are, these are tricky. But even with my wife, I just talked about like sleeping on the couch. Like, as God's people, I stand on my feet. That doesn't mean I'm arrogant. And I say, well, this is my house and this is my room. I've tried it that way. It doesn't go well. Tactful, sensible, considerate, and humble. And humble. My wife will say, oh, I'm so sorry. Whatever, something that she forgot to do. Right. Humble for me means I can give her a hug. And even if it's something that I really would be upset about, I could remember, she has forgiven me for some things a lot worse than forgetting to put a fork in my salad that she made me when I went to work. She made the salad, but I'm angry about the fork. Okay. Sometimes I'll even say it sarcastically and she understands what's happening. I'll say, okay, I forgive you this time. I say it in like a dramatic way where we both understand, like, oh, thank you. You're so kind for forgiving me for this infraction, Mr. Person who cheated on me, you know? And then we both remember, like, let's not forget where we come from. I'm done. I've shared everything I want to share on page 82 and 83. I do, I still think we should take a few minutes to reflect on it. And then we'll open it back up for sharing. Okay, let's do some more sharing. I just want to share one more thing before I give it to you, Yudo. First of all, this reading is to me, way too important to be like a one-time reading. I feel like we really technically could break this reading down into half a paragraph, one or two sentences, and we could probably have a topic meeting on 10 different ideas here. One of the things that we ask each other, I have, the Steel on Steel group that I'm part of. So we have a list of questions that we ask each other. One of them is, are we praying the 9th step prayers daily? The 9th step prayers is this: asking every morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. So while we were just meditating, I came up with a acronym, not an acronym. There's a word for it, like when it says, so for this example, how do I remember what the 4 things are? I realized I'm very thick-headed. So if I want to remember how to do this, I need you to please tell it to me on a kindergarten level. Please tell it to me on a kindergarten level. Please, P, patience. Tell it to me, T, tolerance. A kindergarten, kindliness, level, love. Please tell it to me on a kindergarten level. Patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. We'll see if this helps me remember what the 4 things are. And with that, I pass it over to you. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice. Well, yeah, Heedle sexaholic. Yeah. Well, I'm saying Heedle sexaholic. It's important for me to remember I'm the sexaholic. What hit me was like in the beginning, the first part is like, but he is yet a long way from making good to the wife and parents. It was like, excuse me, aren't they the cause of my addiction? Isn't the trauma, my dysfunctional home, like parents, like, what do you mean? They're the problem. They still are a problem. I was like very disturbed by these words, parent. I never thought there's something that I mean, of course, on my 9th step, my parents came in. Of course, I have to make amends, whatever. But I know, and you know that they're the problem. And talking about living amends, the parents come in, and I was very shocked, and yeah, it just hit me that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But even let's say I'm not going to get into this. If it is their fault, not their fault. Even let's say it is their fault, whatever fault. I mean, not about blame, but the point is, it's part of my cycle and part of my trauma and blah 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 blah. The fact of the matter is, we put away in the ninth step. We put away all the wrong other people have done to me, and I focus on what I've done wrong to them. And there's no doubt about it. The fact that I'm a sexaholic, and the fact that I have been busy with stuff. I love the way they said it. I was involved and I was mixed up. I was mixed up with women in a fashion I wouldn't care to have advertised. The fact that I was mixed up with women, and not, there's nothing wrong with being mixed up with women, but mixed up with women in a fashion that I wouldn't want to advertise. That's an issue, and that affected the way I was a child to my parents. I don't know. Recently, whatever. I don't like to say this on recording, but whatever. My father's really complicated.
Okay.
So, but I still, even though he has his issues and it's hard for me to connect with him, but it's still me as a child. I still, whatever, it doesn't matter what his complication is, I still need to show up as a child. And it's hard for me sometimes to call him. I have to have the right time. I have to be in the right mindset. It was the other day, I think it was Sunday. I called him and I spoke to him. My wife was sleeping and she came out. And I wasn't really saying anything. I was basically, whatever. She only was like 3 minutes into she heard of the conversation. And it was an hour conversation probably. And I put down the phone. She's like, "Who's that, your father?" I said, "Yeah." "How did you know?" She's like, "I don't know, there's something on your face when you talk to your father. I knew you're talking to your father." Like I said, I didn't say anything that, like that you could realize. I knew because I was basically finishing off the conversation. It wasn't that, no, I knew you're talking to your father. So that's how much, like, it shows on me, and that's how much of an effort it is for me to talk to him. But yet still, when reading this, I realized that, no, I do have responsibility as my ninth step to be, part of my living amends is to be there as a child. And no matter how hard it is for me, I'm not saying I need to, I have to, be sensible, tactful, and considerate about myself too, but yet still, I need to realize there is someone out there that I owe an amends to, even though, whatever. That was a very powerful thing that I realized. Then I want to, there's two parts in which really we must take the lead. About living amends to the family, we must take the lead. I cannot be passive. It's very nice, my wife says, go here, go there, you traumatized me, stay away, give me my space, whatever. It's very nice to be. But there's a concept of taking the lead, which I realized at one point in my living amends. I realized that not only she should be the one telling me that I should take my space, but I realized I needed to learn and study and see and understand who my wife is. So, and what triggers her and when she needs her space. So sometimes she doesn't even have to tell me that she needs her space. I just know it myself because I take the lead. And not only that, at many, many times, I tell her, I think, Chandler, you need your space. I think you need whatever, like in many things. And she's like, yeah, you're right. Like, I take the lead and I'm there for her. I'm not passive. I'm not like she throws me around like I could be doing the same thing, but It's like I'm the man here. I'm not the victim. And I think many people have a hard time with living amends because they stay the bad guy. Not so much to their wives, but more to themselves. They stay the bad guy, and like he ends up as God's people. We stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. That's the last words we read. They crawl. They're like the bad people. Oh, I have to make living amends because I messed up. I'm the bad person. I'm the bad person. It's really not about that, and that's counterproductive. That's like a bad 9th step. It's like 9th step gone wrong. I have to take the lead, and that's so important for me. And what really helped me, and I'm just going to share this very briefly. I sexually abused my wife in my sleep. I was sleeping, 100% sleeping. It's part of my trauma. Trauma repeats itself in the sleep, probably. I'm not 100% sure, but this is what the therapists feel happened. And I was sexually abused as a child, and I repeated my trauma in my sleep, and I sexually abused my wife. At one point, my wife couldn't sleep, and we spoke about the fact that maybe I should leave the house for the night because it has been over a week that she hasn't slept. And I remember I reached out to an old timer, and the old timer told me, unfortunately, your wife she's like turning psychotic from all this trauma, and it's even dangerous for you to leave the house and leave your children with her because she's not emotionally stable. And he told me, do not leave. And I remember listening to him, hearing what he says. I didn't dismiss it. But then I was talking to my wife, and she was not psychotic. She ain't crazy. She was very normal, very grounded. She wasn't sleeping for a week. And I left the house. And I remember talking to my spouse, and I told my spouse, she's not crazy. She's not crazy. I mean, she's just not sleeping. And my spouse told her, look, I told you to reach out to this old timer. It's not something I can talk about. I don't understand to these things. I don't know what he's talking about. But, listen, you got to do what you got to do. And I left the house. I took the lead, but not in an arrogant way, but in a humble way of taking the lead and in a very whatever. I know it's a very sensitive thing because when it's basically, it sounds. I don't want to encourage people not to listen to their sponsor, not to listen to old timers. That's not the point. The point is, I have to be a man. I can't be like the old timer told me to do this. I'll do this. I'll do that. I gotta hold it. I gotta own it. I gotta own my living amends. And the reason why it was so easy for me to do it, because I was sleeping and I knew that I am not responsible, I was able to take responsibility. Because it's still something I did, even though I was sleeping, but it was still something I did. So I was responsible to take care of whatever needs to be taken care of that needs to be done. And I remember sharing with people that I'm sleeping, and I slept out of the house for almost 9 months. I was out of the house. I was on the couch for another 2 years probably until we felt comfortable. I used to say it until my wife felt comfortable. I should come back into the bedroom. But at this point, I realized that it wasn't about my wife. It was about we felt comfortable that I should go back into the bedroom. And I remember sharing with people. People used to get so angry. What do you mean, but you're sleeping? What do you mean? And you're sober, but you're sober. They were getting angry. I wasn't getting angry because I was totally cool with the fact that I did this in my sleep. And even though I was sleeping, I am still responsible because it's an action I did. And I could hold the responsibility without any guilt and any shame. So when I realized that, I realized the same thing goes with my addiction. If I truly believe in my first step and my powerlessness and that this is a disease and blah, 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 I can hold the responsibility without guilt and shame, without crawling before anyone. I could stand on my feet, and I can own my sexaholism, and I can own all the damage I did. And it's just very, very easy to make amends, to make living amends, and to hold it, and to own it, and to take the lead. It's not shameful. It's not. I'm not putting myself down. And the discussion before, and I don't want to reference too much about this on recording, but the discussion we had before, that's why people sometimes have such a hard time and think that I'm they put that I'm under the raw or whatever, like I'm in the doghouse or whatever. No, I'm not. I'm taking the lead. I'm happy with it. I'm comfortable with it. I feel like a man. I don't feel like a victim. So yeah, thanks for letting me share.
Oh my God. You're on fire today. I want to have a whole nother meeting and just I unfortunately time will not allow it. 7:30. And I didn't even realize for a moment I wasn't muted before. I was reacting on unmuted to things you were saying, and then I realized that I muted myself. But every word, I mean, from the talking about parents and family to we must take the lead as God's people. We don't crawl before anyone. And I'm glad I said the set aside prayer, because I learned something new today. I really do want to put more thought into this idea of amends to my family. I don't mean my wife, my parents. And I do feel like I do have a living amends with them, because I definitely, if I put this reading into context of my siblings, my parents, putting aside their wrongs, right? They may have defects that are glaring. And in their case, it wasn't because they lived with me. I certainly was a difficult child. I certainly added white hairs to their heads and wrinkles to their foreheads and uncountable trips to the principal's office. And I was a full-time job. And by the way, I have siblings, especially my younger siblings. I was not an easy sibling to be in the family with. And I can appreciate that today, because I took a lot of space. I was an attention seeker, even outside of sexualism, just in terms of stealing the limelight. And I wish I could have an honest conversation with my siblings. Like, tell me what it was really like.
Well, to mute.
Push right to the front. What was it really like having me as an older sibling who pushed my way to the front? They won't. I've tried. I did my 9th step. It was fun. It was this. And what was it really like that my parents had to give me all the attention, and the good kids got ignored. So these are things that maybe direct amends won't do justice to it. But maybe the next time I see them, I could make living amends by taking interest in their families. Hey, how's it going? How's your job? How are your kids? What's new? The parts of their lives that were ignored because my parents were always at the principal's office or driving me to therapy. So that's something that was you brought up at the beginning of your share. And then this other thing, when I must take the lead, I love what you said about like own it, make amends for it. And it's not because I'm a bad guy.
Muted again.
Keep getting in the middle. I'm on my phone. While we were talking, I got a text about living amends with the family. I'm kidding you not. It says, the text said, how do I make sense out of this? It feels very Christian, like now I must suffer for my sins. And I texted back, I'll send you a recording later. And I meant this recording. So the person who's listening to this recording now knows who I'm talking about. We're not, and it's what you were talking about. We're not suffering for our sins. We're just setting things right. And as God's people, we don't crawl before anyone. We hold our heads up high, knowing that we're on a journey. So amazing, so amazing. I need to go because I'm needed at home and it's 7:35. So let's close out. Let's say the serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know to do. Thy will, not ours, be done. All right. Thanks, Edel. I'll talk to you.
Thank you. Yeah,
You're
bye.
welcome.
Thanks.